Welcome to Grow Law Firm Podcast. I have a terrific guest here with me today, David Ackert. David Ackert is a techpreneur and a business development extraordinaire. David's firm has developed a software that helps attorneys and other professional service providers generate a lot more business. And David, I'm going to turn it over to you. If you could talk about your journey, how you came to develop this software and how it serves attorneys and law firms.
Sure, Sasha. Well, first of all, thanks for the opportunity to be a guest on your podcast, and happy to chat a little bit about the journey, as you call it. It's been definitely an unpredictable road. So what I would say is that we started the company with the notion that we wanted to be advisors to advisors. So we work with professional services across the globe. And initially what we were doing was providing training and coaching, guidance to help them understand how they can be more effective as business developers. Now, you know this because you work with law firms as well. It's not a process or a skill set that necessarily comes naturally to a lot of lawyers. Many lawyers are concerned that they're going to come across as overly salesy, or they're going to be too forward if they are proactive when it comes to business development. Most of them would prefer to just sort of wait for the phone to ring and then provide excellent service. And hopefully that work speaks for itself. And then the client comes back to them for more work. And certainly there was a time when one could build a healthy practice with that approach. But as the landscape has gotten more competitive, and I think as the profession has gotten a little more sophisticated in understanding that sales doesn't necessarily have to be a dirty word, and that there are appropriate ways to nurture relationships and be proactive in reaching out to people and making sure that you're talking to them about their needs and that you're helping them to address those needs, rather than take a more passive approach where you wait for them to come to you. That's a better way, and ultimately an accelerated way, of growing a practice and optimizing the professional network that the lawyer has. So we started off helping lawyers understand those distinctions through coaching and training. About 10 years into the company, we discovered that repeatedly we were running into a operational barrier that lawyers struggle with, which is that they don't have any systems in place for organizing their relationships, for keeping people top of mind, and for staying top of mind with other people. Now, certainly there are marketing mechanisms that they can use. They can send newsletters, or they could, use social media, but that stuff generally doesn't deepen relationships, right? It's a good way to just kind of ping someone from time to time, and that's fine. But this is ultimately a relationship business. If you're going to have a meaningful, long-term, loyal client, it's because they've learned to like you and trust you, and they want to use you over and over again, not necessarily because they got a newsletter. So when we're working with lawyers now, we will integrate a technology that we've developed that helps them to organize their most important contacts, their clients, their prospects, and their referral sources, into a dashboard that will remind them when they need to reach out to these people. And also the tool will guide them on what they need to do with those people, because as I said earlier, it's not necessarily a process that comes naturally to lawyers. So this PipelinePlus platform is licensed to mostly mid to large size firms across the globe. And it's a tool that they use to ensure that their most important asset, which is their network, their relationships, is getting the attention that it needs so that they can capture as many opportunities to be of service as possible.
Makes great sense. It's very, very interesting. And for those who are listening but may not know what I do, so I operate a marketing company that serves law firms, but I will never claim that marketing can replace your pipeline, or not replace, fill your pipeline completely. I always say that business development, and for most of our attorneys, those are transactional, not corporate attorneys. It is about developing relationships with other attorneys in the field who can feed into their pipeline, their referrals, those prospects or those cases that they would rather not work on because that is not their main practice area. So I always think about it this way, that as you mentioned, most attorneys would rather wait for the phone to ring, and business development is hard. For many of them, it's unpleasant, it's unnatural, and they would rather never do that. And in the process, they spare themselves of millions of dollars in additional income for just simply not doing it. But business development does not have to be hard if you do it systematically. There is a video on your website, and the website is Pipeline Plus. It's a terrific video. It's about 3 minutes long, and it explains what the software does and how business development should be done so brilliantly well in the span of 3 minutes. I love this part about the video where the presenter says something along the lines that professional service providers, obviously including lawyers, are so busy helping other people, they rarely have the time to help themselves. But developing a network of just a dozen or so of professional referral sources, other attorneys, financial planners, whoever it may be, depending on your main practice area, could be worth millions of dollars, millions, not thousands, not tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. It's millions of dollars over the course of your career. The software really helps them systematize it. Can you talk a little bit more about like how exactly it does that and what support systems are in place? Because I've never seen this thing before, but once I saw it, I was like, holy shit, I wish I saw this 20 years ago. And I think that everybody who is in professional services where referrals are highly coveted, they're highly coveted, right? Should at least see this and understand the potential that's out there and it's there for the taking. So how does it
Well,
work?
I appreciate your comments, Sasha. And first, let me say this. It's important for lawyers to understand that there's a funnel in place when it comes to marketing and business development. And those two functions are very much complementary, but they're not the same thing. Many lawyers will say, oh, it's all marketing. Well, that's actually not true. Marketing is what happens at the top of your funnel. And what I mean by funnel is that, literally picture a funnel. It's got the wide end at the top and the narrow end at the bottom. And this is your professional network. And at the top, you've got all the people that you know, right? Your 500 plus LinkedIn connections or all the people in your database. And you need to market to those people. This is where your newsletters and your SEO and your social media, these sort of shotgun blasts out into the world are important because it elevates the profile of your practice, of your firm. It helps people understand where they can find you, that what you do, and also helps them perhaps understand how you can help them more specifically. But once they've moved through that top half of the funnel, through the marketing half, they enter the business development half at the bottom. And that's where you're now in a one-on-one conversation with someone who has raised their hand and said, okay, I saw your social media post, I went to your website, I read your newsletter, whatever, and now I have a need and I want to talk to you about that. Or now I'm a referral source with a little bit more of a relationship with you and I want to build on that relationship to see if maybe we can help each other, right? So now you're in that one-on-one conversation with the person. This is business development. And it takes time, obviously, as I said, you've got to build their trust and that you've got to make sure that you have some rapport there and that there's a sustainable relationship. But as you say, Sasha, over time, as they move through the bottom half of that funnel, they're going to be delivering millions of dollars over the course of your career in referral business or engaging you directly if you play your cards right. But you can't ignore the bottom half of your funnel if, again, you want to optimize the potential of that professional network. So PipelinePlus really focuses on the bottom half of the funnel. So I would say to your listeners, if you're in a smaller practice or you're consumer facing or whatever kind of law you're practicing, and you're looking to outsource your marketing function, you need to talk to somebody like Sasha, because Sasha will help you get through that top half of the funnel. But then once you get those leads and these people are in your network and you're having some sort of personal relationship with them, then the business development process begins where you nurture over time to manifest into engagement cases, what have you. Now, to answer your question about how does PipelinePlus do that, the answer is we have simplified, we have distilled that process down to just a few simple clicks. Why? Because of your earlier point. Lawyers are way too busy to engage in a process that is complicated or that requires a lot of time or that requires a lot of technical proficiency. A lot of them just don't have the patience for that, or they don't have the time for it, or they're not willing to make the time for it. Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's not getting done unless you have a tool that really simplifies this process. So the way PipelinePlus works is you go on the website, pipelineplus.com, you can sign up for a free trial of the software, and then the software will prompt you to say, okay, who are some of your most important referral sources? Just pick 3. And let's say you say top of mind, all right, yeah, well, there's this other attorney and we cross referral back and forth. And then there's this CPA, and sometimes they'll send me a matter here and there, maybe some tax law or whatever it is. And then, there's this financial advisor, or there's this consultant, or, whoever it is. And you pick those 3 people, and within about 2 to 3 minutes, you've entered them into Pipeline Plus, and now Pipeline Plus is just going to say, great. So you mentioned that there's Judy, this lawyer who sends you work from time to time. In about 2 to 3 months, the app will remind you to reach out to Judy, and it will then give you suggestions with short videos, like you said, Sasha, 2-3 minutes, very, very time compressed videos with some suggestions on maybe what to say to Judy and what to do with Judy in order to ensure that you're maximizing that relationship and that opportunity. Because lawyers, to their credit, right, the reason that they have an aversion to sales is that you don't want to just reach out to Judy and say, hi, Judy, we haven't talked for a while. You got any work for me? I mean, that's a terrible way to nurture a relationship, right? Or, well, we had lunch 3 months ago. I guess let's have lunch again. I don't know, right? I mean, at some point, lawyers are looking to deliver substantive value in their relationships. And they're really smart people. They want to have smart conversations where they feel like they're moving the ball forward. But if they don't know how to do that, and they don't have a tool that helps them manage that process, then of course they will opt out. So this is what Pipeline Plus is designed to do: help them organize their most important relationships, keep those relationships top of mind, and keep the lawyers proactive in their outreach with those people, but also give them distinct strategies and techniques and approaches for what to say in that outreach process.
Brilliant, and here's why. So here's how I think about different lawyers doing business development. Some don't do anything and hope that it will just happen. It's the most passive approach. Some do it haphazardly when there is a chance to talk to others who may be sending me business. This is going to conferences once or twice a year, shaking hands with the same people, reminding them about what you do, or they remind you what they do. And this is also very, very passive approach. Better than not doing anything at all, but it's very passive. Then there are some who know when they get really hungry, as in their pipeline is like drying up. They start on calling and emailing and hoping and praying that something will happen. But as we know it, a single touch point or even 2 touch points is not enough. As brilliantly pointed out in that 3-minute video on your website, it takes 14 touch points before touch points, meaning an email, a phone call, a coffee, a lunch, a game of golf, before they engage, before the relationship starts yielding dividends. It's not overnight. It's not one connection. It's not one handshake at a conference. You'll have to shake that hand 14 years in a row at that same conference before something happens. This thing, Pipeline Plus, it's like paying a consultant to be next to you with every single person who could be sending you business, and that consultant telling you what to do, when you need to do it, and actually giving you the prescription. Like, it tells you, like, here's what to say, here are your options. Now, a consultant like that would easily cost $500 per hour. And if you develop a list of, let's say, 2,000 people, and those 2,000 people, in that list of 2,000 people, you have 3 people who are already actively engaged with you. You send business back and forth, and the other 21, you hope to develop that type of relationship so that you can become very wealthy just based off of those relationships, mutually wealthy, right? Sending business back and forth. To get those relationships developed, you need to be proactive. As the video once again brilliantly points out, a touch point every 6 weeks. Who is going to remind you to do those touch points? Pipeline Plus will do. Who is going to tell you what are your options as far as the next touch point? Pipeline Plus will do. So imagine 21 people, a touch point every 6 weeks. So this is roughly 9 touch points a year. 21 times 9, this is 189 touch points per year. If you hire a consultant and every time you hire them, they tell you what to do with this touch point or with this contact person at $400 a pop. So this is roughly 200 contact or 200 touch points times $400 per touch point, $80,000 a year. Or you could spend like a couple $100 a year, a little more than a couple $100, but still significant, a tiny fraction of what you would pay your consultant who would stand there and hold your hand and have the software hold your hand for you. And the videos there are brilliant. How do I know they're brilliant? I watched a few of them, and I've seen a lot of good videos, and I've seen a lot more bad videos. These are so clear. It's like having that consultant who's standing next to you and telling you exactly what to do and breaks it down in such simple terms. That's why, like, when I started this conversation, I was like, holy shit, I wish I would have seen this 20 years ago. Would have helped me make a lot more money and would have helped so many other people who I've met along the way, because I've been running my own business for the last 22 plus years. Like, everyone would have been wealthier if we would have seen this. So well done.
Well, thanks, Sasha. And that really was the vision behind it. We recognize that consultants are great, but as you say, not necessarily a sustainable expense for some people. And if we can take the benefit, at least in part, and put that into technology, then people have it on their phone, in their pocket, at the ready, and it's helping them manage. I love the math that you just went through, right? In terms of how many touch points ultimately is it going to take, and what does that equate to over the course of a year? And you name those three categories. The first category is a lawyer that does nothing, right? Just sort of passive. And then there's the lawyer who's haphazard. And we know that the haphazard lawyer will be a little more successful than the passive lawyer, right? Because obviously, the more people you're having conversations with, the more opportunities, the more prospective clients, the more referral sources, the more business. We also know the lawyer who is really proactive is probably the most successful of the three. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. They wouldn't bother to put in all that non-billable time if it wasn't yielding billable results. So we see that there is a direct impact on your ability to be proactive with key relationships, to be organized, and to be purposeful in your business development. This app is simply designed to help those who are passive to become at least haphazard, and those who are haphazard to become proactive, and maybe perhaps those who are proactive to become masterful. So, it's a resource that lawyers can turn to as they're going through that journey.
100%. And I want to put more numbers on this. So the truth that nobody wants to talk about openly, but talk about behind closed doors, private conversations at conferences. Most of the lawyers that you speak to, if you have a very frank conversation with them, so many will say, I don't want to do this anymore. I've seen enough battles. I've been to a lot of courtrooms. I don't want to do this anymore. I just don't know how to work myself out of this job and get to the next level. And here's how the legal profession breaks down. And they think of a legal profession in terms of income as this big pyramid. The bottom layer, the foundation of it, is humongous. It is probably 85, 90%. Those are the lawyers who do legal work. There's a natural ceiling, income ceiling, that everybody who does legal work has. So according to BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, 2021 median income for attorneys in the United States, $127,990. If you live in a high-cost area like I do in Chicago, and you're the single earner, or you're not the single earner, you have another earner, your wife, your husband, whoever, and you have two kids, it's not a lot of money. You're doing okay, but it's not a lot of money. If you're a single earner, you're struggling. Like in Chicago, you are struggling. This is hard, right? Somewhere in lower cost of living, like Charlotte, North Carolina, I love Charlotte, right? You're going to be doing better, but still not great. Top 10% income earners make $209,000 and above. Better, but still not great. The natural ceiling for lawyers who do legal work is about $450,000. I do not have hard data on this. There's anecdotal evidence that there's just not enough billable hours for you to make more than $450,000. I'm sure there are some outliers that you have seen or heard of, but most lawyers will not make than $450,000. I'm making this claim early 2023. Maybe by the time you watch this 10 years from now, inflation eats it away, and like you're now making 1.5, but your house costs $15 million. No idea. Because that's what houses cost in 2033. I have no idea. But the bottom layer, this is lawyers doing legal work. The next layer, it's thin. And that layer, we call them the rainmakers. The rainmakers spend very little time doing legal work. They focus on high value cases, depending on their practice area, and they may be spending 5, 10, 15, maybe 20% of their time on legal work. The rest of it is spent on the business and, more importantly, business development. Everyone I talked to, they said that they either want to be a rainmaker or an effective CEO of a high value law firm. By the way, you can run a $5 million law firm, and that could be a very effective business, producing $1 million in profit for you, the CEO. But just to graduate from being in the bottom layer, nothing wrong with being there, it's just a more difficult living with a lower income, to the rainmaker, it requires exactly what you're talking about. It requires doing a lot of business development, shaking a lot of hands, drinking a lot of coffee, having a lot of lunches, and swinging your golf club maybe as often as you like, maybe even more often than you like. But without having that guide in the background, Pipeline Plus, how do you figure out who do you need to connect with? When do you need to connect with them? And what do you want to talk about? This thing brilliantly lays it out step by step by step. So I am thinking that if you're making that median income of 128, or you're in the top 10, 209, or anywhere between 209 and 450, that's great. How would you like to move on to the rainmaker level layer in that pyramid and start making 500 plus, 700 plus, 800 plus? It requires a lot of those relationships. It doesn't require doing a lot more legal work. Don't think about it. It's not about doing a lot more legal work. If you're the rainmaker, you're pulling that business in magnetically because you have built those relationships, and you're feeding that business to your associates, and you are making more money because you're billing out your associates. If you do it right, at 3.5 to 4 times what you're paying them. And what you do is you listen to your Pipeline Plus virtual consultant tell you when and how to connect with people. Just keep on swinging that golf club, keep on having your lunches, coffees, shake hands. Within a few years, it's not going to be overnight. None of these things happen overnight, but within a few years, holy shit, you're going to be so much further along than you are today.
Well, I really appreciate the way that you lay that out, Sasha. And I just want to underscore your last point there. It's not overnight. And if you're someone who is, much more oriented around billing your time, and you're in the bottom of that pyramid, the idea of becoming a rainmaker might seem completely out of reach. The idea of having a lot of lunches and a lot of golf games and whatever it is, a lot of coffees, might seem completely distasteful to you, such that it's not even worth it. It's not worth the extra $1 million or $2 million to have to change your behavior that dramatically, right? I mean, you say it, you put it on paper, and it's like, well, of course, everyone wants that. But there is a psychological barrier that a lot of people have. Some people just don't have the personality for it. And what I really want to make sure that your listeners understand is that all you have to do is just take the next step, the next achievable baby step, right? And that could be simply buying the app, or it could be simply writing down a few names on a piece of paper. You don't even have to call them, but writing down the names is the next step. And then that piece of paper sits there for a few days, and it just kind of keeps staring at you, right? And then finally you're like, all right, I'm going to email one of them, just one of them. And that's the next step. And you just email them and you say, hey, haven't talked to you for a while, just wanted to say hello. And that's your next step. And then a few days go by and you see the 2 names left, and you're like, all right. I think I could probably connect with the second one on LinkedIn. That's your next step, right? And I know I'm really, breaking this down in kind of a pedantic fashion, but that's how life works ultimately. Right. And you don't have to be a business development monster to be successful. You can simply navigate your humanity, navigate those excuses and all of that resistance that comes up, but you don't want it to win the argument. You want to make sure that you're also pushing back and you're debating with it, such that at the end of the day, you're at least liberated to take the next step, so that you are building your practice and achieving your goals. It's back to the thing you said, Sasha, that's in that video, which is that lawyers fall into this trap of helping other people all day long, and then there's no energy left to help themselves. So the whole principle behind Pipeline Plus is, even if it's just an iota every few days, you've got to make sure that you're building your practice, not just sustaining it, and not just making a rainmaker somewhere rich.
So good. And let me add a couple more points to this. Number one, I've been around a while. I'm in my mid 40s now, and I found that everything that was worthwhile was super uncomfortable to start. Like super uncomfortable. Like dating was really difficult. Starting a business was really difficult. Making the first 20, 30, 50 sales was really difficult. Like everything that's worthwhile is hard, uncomfortable, makes you want to puke, raises your blood pressure, gets your hair gray, like you name it. It's uncomfortable. Do you want a higher standard of living? Get over it. Nothing worthwhile is easy to do. Otherwise, everyone would be super successful, super fit, super this and super that. I want to break this down further. So I mentioned that if you have 3 referral partners, 3 referral sources today, and you want to amplify it, you go from 3 to 24, multiply it 8 times. And you're like, cool, I am going to add 21 people to my pipeline, the people who I want to develop relationships. Doesn't mean that you're going to develop a brilliant relationship with every single one of them. Life doesn't work that way, and that's okay, right? But you're like, I'm only going to connect with 21 more people and work on building relationship with them really simply with the help of Pipeline Plus over the next 24 months. How easy is it actually? Is it really that hard? So here's what I'm thinking. 21 people, right? I need to connect with every single one of them every 6 weeks or 9 times a year. So again, 9 times 21, that's 189. I'll make it simple. It's 190. 190 divided by 12 is roughly 15. You really need to reach out to somebody's 16 times a month, which translates into four touch points per week. Most of those touch points, after you watch the short video from Pipeline Plus that's going to be sent to you automatically, this may be a 5-minute endeavor, maybe a 3-minute endeavor, maybe a 10-minute endeavor. Let's call it a 10-minute endeavor, 4 times a week. That's 40 minutes. Here's a hard fact from Clio.com, the most widely used practice management software. Attorneys average 1.7 billable hours per day. What the fuck, pardon my French, do you do with the other 6.5 hours? Don't tell me you don't have 10 minutes to reach out to a person. You got that time. You're spending it on administrative work that could be done for 20 bucks an hour. You got the time. All you need is just a little bit of assistance, which again, Pipeline Plus does brilliantly, to execute on it. Like 10 minutes a day, put it on your calendar that 10 minutes a day, I'm going to send someone an email. Pick up the phone and just call them out of the blue, surprise them. Hey, it's Sasha. What's new and exciting, David? I just thought of you. Just wants to give you a quick call. Like, I just added another associate, wants to see how you're doing, blah, blah, blah. Are you going to be at the conference next month? Easy shit, but as Jim Rohn brilliantly put 30 years ago, what's easy to do is even easier not to do. But in the process, you might spare yourself a few $1 million.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right, Sasha. And your listeners might be thinking 21 referral sources. I don't even know where to find 21 referral sources. And again, that's why we have the videos baked into the platform, right? Because lawyers, they're very good at being contrary, right? They're very good at finding liabilities, looking at a situation and seeing all of the problems that are inherent to the situation. That's what makes you a good lawyer. Your clients are hiring you for that. They want you to point at the dangers and the reasons why the client perhaps shouldn't take whatever direction they're thinking of taking because there's a legal liability or there's a risk, right? So they tend to be risk averse. And so we want to be respectful of that. That is simply a quality that makes you a good lawyer. It's not so helpful in business development. So this is why, again, we've put these videos into the tool to help make a case for how to get from 3 to 21, if that's not something that immediately pops into your head, where to go to meet those people, how to nurture those relationships, and how to ultimately vet them because 21 other lawyers or other service providers or whatever makes up the profile for your referral source doesn't necessarily mean that all of them have earned their place on your shortlist. Just because you know them doesn't mean they're going to make great referral sources. So how do you vet them? How do you look for the characteristics that suggest that they're going to be able to refer good work to you and ultimately be good reciprocal partners?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So if your pipeline is not full, go to PipelinePlus, sign up for a free trial. The videos alone are going to be more than worth your time. Sign up for this thing. 36 months later, you can reach out to David directly. Find him on LinkedIn, David Ackert, Ackert, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Find him on LinkedIn. Thank him.
I'll plug this back to you, Sasha, which is, remember, it's a funnel, and marketing is at the top of that funnel. And you need to make sure that people know where to find you, that people are able to understand what you do, and that there's exposure and recurring touch points with your practice and with you personally. And that's all marketing. That stuff can be automated. That stuff can be outsourced to a firm like Sasha's. But then once you reach the middle and toward the bottom of that funnel, then you have to roll up your sleeves and you have to nurture those relationships yourself personally. And hopefully PipelinePlus is a resource that you might turn to help with that.
100%, 100%. Thank you so much for this. One more last point that I wanted to make. I mentioned a minute or two ago that according to Clio, typical attorney, 1.7 billable hours per day. Once they're optimized in their workflows and delegate a lot of their work, they go from 1.7 to 2.3 billable hours. If you're an attorney and you're not tracking how you're spending your time, and when you hear me say this, you say I'm full of shit. By the way, this is based on 30,000 law firm data set, meaning it's not you and it's not them. It's everybody on average, 1.7 to 2.3 billable hours per day. Like, you got the time to make yourself rich by doing this, taking this very simple steps. Just be very patient and it's going to come. Follow the process and you will get the results. David, it was such a blast to have you here. Thank you so much for guest appearance.
Again, Sasha, appreciate the opportunity, and I wish you all the best with your firm, and I hope your clients are listening keenly to your insights on this podcast. There are a lot of good nuggets here.
And that's a wrap. So great show. I have a referral for you. One of my first podcast guests was Stacy Brown Rundle. She is a trainer, a coach, primarily for attorneys. And what she teaches them is referral networks, but she doesn't have a software behind her. I think that what you're offering and what she is offering, you pair that up, it's a beautiful symphony.
That'd be great. Yeah, we work with a lot of consultants who are exactly that. They don't have the technological infrastructure to sustain kind of the momentum after they're done working with a client. So we'd be happy to chat with her.
Yeah, I'll record a quick intro video right now and connect you to, and you take it from there. My podcast production team is about 3-4 weeks in the turnaround time. So I'll send you an email with all of your creative assets and give or take, let's call it toward the end of April.
Sure, that sounds fine. And yeah, so give me a heads up before it goes out, and that way I can support it on LinkedIn and social media.
Perfect. Thanks so much, David. Really appreciate
it.
It was great. Yep. Talk in a few weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.